All right, everybody, welcome to Staples Center, another edition of From the Arena. I'm Charles E. Smith Jr. alongside
Andrew Knoll.
All right, and here we are in the wake of the Montreal Canadiens and Los Angeles Kings game. Well, you know, Andrew, the Kings have a little bit of a history here with the day games, and today was kind of no different. They outshoot Montreal 14-5 in the first period, though Montreal was leading after 1-0, and well, things just kind of.
Yeah, they didn't really make hay from that early push. You saw a big advantage in shots, and they had some decent chances, including a 5-on-3 power play. But from there, it really kind of went downhill as far as their offensive opportunities went.
Well, and what I didn't understand was there was a point where they were out shooting them 12-3. Yeah. We were watching the game, and I didn't understand, okay, if you can dominate this team really 5-on-5, shouldn't you be able to generate something on the power play 5-on-3? Forget the fact that Montreal has one of the best penalty kills in the league at this point. Still,
right.
If you are playing against a team on any given night and they are basically whooping your butt in 5-on-5, when they get a power play, it shouldn't really change.
You would think, but with the 5-on-3, the thing that really struck me is that there didn't seem to be much to shoot at. And normally you could say, well, the penalty killers are out working the power play guys, but when it's 5-on-3, that really falls on the offensive team. When you have that much space out there, you're going to have opportunities to get it across the ice. And if you get it across the ice twice, you should be able to score, or at least generate much better chances than the Kings were getting there during that stretch.
Yeah, one would think, but I don't know. They did control it. They were in the zone, but there were never any quality scoring chances.
Right.
And in fact, when they had a 5-on-4 power play later in the period, the Kings registered one shot on that power play. So, and it does it when we look at the three stars of the game. Some of you may find a joke in here, but I don't really mean it that way. The fact that Dustin Penner was the third star of the game, is that indicative of how the Kings played tonight, or was he really that strong on the ice?
Well, he did manage to score the lone goal for the Kings, and I think sometimes the three-star voting is definitely geared toward that. You get the game winner, you get the only goal, but yeah. It really was the best chance that the Kings had, other than a disallowed goal by Jack Johnson, where there was all kinds of stuff going on in the blender down there, people laying on top of Price and that sort of thing. So, yeah, I mean, really not a lot of life out of the Kings skaters tonight, particularly on the offensive end. So you would have been hard-pressed to find another guy from the LA side to replace Penner with.
Exactly. And, you know, the Kings, when we did the last show, they were talking about still looking for that statement win, which they needed, which they got over the San Jose Sharks 2-0. But then here we are looking at the Kings. Granted, Richards is on IR right now. Mike Richards, he's going to be out for 7 days at least. He's on the IR with a upper body injury. Is that
somewhere in this area, I believe? Yeah.
Okay. Upper body, is it? So if you have the quadrant, would it be this upper quadrant or this part, which is also the upper body?
Right. I would say somewhere above the neck. Would just be a guess.
What do they call it if you hurt your hand? Because your hand's
a lateral
into the
body
lower
injury. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll have to clear that one up. Mid-body injury.
We will.
Is the one Alain Vigneault coined. So we'll go with that.
What happened to that whole thing of undisclosed injury? They can't do that anymore. They have to say if it's upper or lower.
And they have to say flu-like symptoms also. That used to be
one
that seemed to have fallen out of favor recently.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, and plus two Kings. One of them resulted in a goal, the other didn't, but we had Kings in the same spot. Matt Green and Jack Johnson both tripped over the blue line here in their own zone, which resulted on odd man breaks.
I didn't know they were putting speed bumps on the blue line now. That's something that research and development's come up with. Yeah, we see Green take a spill there. At least a pretty nifty play by Montreal, where it's kind of a tic-tac-toe action.
It was a beautiful play on that goal by Kostitsyn.
And then also Johnson takes a spill, so kind of indicative of the overall play by the Kings today. Not super flat, but certainly not super sharp.
No, it wasn't. It was, and even when they were out shooting them 12-3, still you kind of got that feeling that okay, it's out shooting them 12-3, but still at 0-0, and you're just kind of waiting. In fact, I believe I said to you when Montreal got their late power play, and I said, "Oh, watch, fourth shot of the game, Montreal score." I believe it was their fifth or sixth, but it did happen, and well, that's kind of how it went. And then you have Jarrett Stoll late in the game getting wood chopped by P.K. Subban in the face-off dot. He's screaming for a penalty.
Literally, yeah.
Yes, he was. I've never seen that kind of a protest in the circle before.
No, nor have I, and it certainly seemed like a flagrant call. I actually talked to Subban about it after the game in the Montreal locker room. His claim, his account of the events was that the centerman stepped on Stoll's stick, and that's where it broke, and when he made contact with his stick, that it just split what was already a broken stick. So interesting account from Subban, but either way, there was no call. LA stays 6-on-5. They can't cash in the waning seconds and wind up losing the game 2-1.
Yep, and then the Kings have games coming up in this next coming week. I believe they've got Minnesota, and then they're also playing their crosstown somewhat rival, the Ducks. Just a rival because of proximity. I still would love to see those two teams meet in the playoffs one day.
Yeah.
Probably not going to happen this year, though, looking the way the Ducks are playing.
No, it certainly doesn't, and we've had a chance to get down to the Ducks games this week, and two of the games they've had substantial leads. The last two losses that they've had, last night against Philadelphia and then against Chicago, they had two 2-goal leads against Chicago.
Right.
Wind up losing the game. Horrendous third period. They had a 3-goal lead last night, 3-0 against the Flyers, but it never felt secure. It was probably the flimsiest 3-goal lead that I've seen, and sure enough, it blew away in the wind. They wound up losing 4-3 in overtime. You have to wonder, where's the depth on this team? Yeah. Where are the veteran guys in their bottom six? Where are the defensive players who can deal with a lead, shut down a game? You just don't see it with Anaheim, and while they've spent a lot of money and a lot of time getting that top six going and their skill players, you just don't see any kind of depth with this team right now.
Exactly, and as we talk about the Anaheim Ducks, for those of you who may not know the saga of the Anaheim Ducks, and also Bruce Boudreau is now the coach, he gets fired by the Washington Capitals on Tuesday. The Anaheim Ducks coach, Randy Carlyle, gets fired after a win against Montreal. He gets fired after he gives the press conference to the media. He gets fired about an hour after that. Right. On Wednesday, Bruce Boudreau gets introduced as the new coach, I believe that same evening. And then he gets behind the bench for the Anaheim Ducks on Friday, and everything looks rosy. That first period is, okay, brand new coach, right, brand new fire. They're going to rededicate themselves. Looks like maybe the guys were lagging. They were kind of, as they say, playing to get your coach fired type of a thing, maybe. And then after the first period, though, Bruce Boudreau came to know what Randy Carlyle came to know.
Well, it's a situation where you can fire the coach, you can fire the management very easily, but you can't fire a roster full of players or make wholesale changes. We started to hear some trade rumors during the week about Bobby Ryan maybe making a deal to get them some immediate help on the roster. I don't see a great fit there. I think they're going to have to write it out with this group, but maybe retool with some veteran guys to get on that checking line, to get on that second defense pairing, guys like that, because so far they made the coaching change. It's only been one game, but the results didn't change. I mean, they were nearly identical. If you look at the Chicago game and the Philadelphia game, those two losses in between, they win against Montreal, ironically, in the last game Carlisle coaches there. The results are so similar that you get the feeling that this was not a problem behind the bench. This was a problem out there on the ice with the 20 guys they're dressing.
Yeah, exactly. And, as we go back to their glory days here, we flash a picture. It just seems like so long ago. Though it was only 2007 that this was the scene in Anaheim when they brought the Stanley Cup, first Stanley Cup in the state of California and in Southern California, much to the chagrin of a lot of Kings fans. There they were celebrating, all was right with the world, and they looked with that roster. When I looked at it, I thought, okay, for the next 5 to 7 years, that's why I always look at teams. I'm looking at 5 to 7. They're going to be amongst the elite teams at least in the Western Conference. And oh, how the mighty have fallen.
Well, and here we are exactly 5 years removed from that Cup victory by the Anaheim Ducks in 2007, and the personality of their team has changed considerably. Then they were anchored by two number one defensemen, guys that would have been number one defensemen on any roster in the NHL, with Niedermeyer and Pronger. They had a very steady checking line, Paulson, Niedermeyer, and Todd Marchand.
Right.
They don't have any of those things anymore. The personality of their team has completely flipped around. Now
the roles. You talk about the role players not quite knowing what they're going to do. We're looking at the Matt Boleskis of the world and guys like that who are just working their way in. But what exactly am I to do on a nightly basis? But the good thing was when we got a chance to talk with Boudreau last night, and what he said was, and someone asked the question. He said, what are you going to do with this team? Can you turn it into a playoff team? And he said, you still have 2/3 of the season to go. He says if you're going to throw in the towel right now, there's no reason to even show up every night. So he does plan on working with the team. He sees they're going to have to get a lot of points. They're going to have to turn this thing around really quickly. And really, it's going to take a run similar to what they had the second half of last season, but starting a little bit earlier. in order to get this team into the playoffs. But Anaheim, I've always said this whole season, they are better. When you look at the roster, look at it man to man, they're better than that product that they're putting on the ice every night.
Oh, most definitely. But we saw a similar situation last year with the New Jersey Devils, where they were throwing a lot of young guys into the mix. They had some injuries and really underperformed at the start of the season. And they were the best team in the National Hockey League in the second half of the year. They still didn't make the playoffs. So if you dig yourself a hole, you can't start greasing up the sides now. They really need to get this turned around now. If they go on a 4 or 5 game winning streak, that'll give them a push in the right direction. But if they keep muddling like this, you've got a couple more weeks and you've got to start looking at those central scouting reports and the upcoming draft.
Exactly, and so they've got Minnesota coming into town. They'll be playing in Anaheim Sunday night against the Ducks with a 5 o'clock start time. And, let's a little bit of Eastern Conference. The team that was there last night, Jaromir Jagr, what's he, 43 years old now, I believe?
He's 41. Yeah, he got in a fight with Eddie Shore when he was developing. Yeah, he's been around a little bit.
But what I liked was, here we go, Jaromir Jagr has 2 power play goals, and he assists on the game-tying goal against Anaheim last night. But the thing I liked was in the locker room, and I know players are a lot more jovial after a win than a loss, but I have kind of followed Jagr's career, interviewed him back in the early 90s when he was coming up, and he went from really a happy-go-lucky kid to kind of a moody superstar. But I see that boyish exuberance is kind of back with Jagr when I saw him in the locker room, and that's really kind of refreshing to see.
Oh, well, absolutely, and certainly the journey he has taken in his career, you could understand those kind of shifts in his personality. He goes in from being an upstart 18-year-old rookie, taking the league by storm, to a $100 million guy, to spending the last 3 seasons playing in Russia. Right. And I know that changed him considerably. He said that there weren't a lot of kind of rules and structure to his lifestyle over there, so he had to develop them for himself. And I think now, just as he said, he is back to that youthful exuberance, that excitement and passion for playing hockey, and is really showing because that signing has paid huge dividends for the Philadelphia Flyers.
Exactly, and he had missed a few games. But yeah, he is back now, and he said it's going to take a while for him to get back into game shape, but physically he's fine, other than the whole, the cardiovascular thing. As we know, this is a game where you skate 45-second shifts. Just to tell you, world-class athletes last 45 seconds out there. That just tells you how much energy is expended when you're trying to play this game.
That's what I keep telling my girlfriend, but she's not buying it. But, yeah, Jagr out there, speaking of world-class athletes, you see him and Teemu Selanne sharing the same ice last night. It felt like a time machine, and it felt wonderful to see those guys out there, 40-somethings, still can play this game, still around a point per game, and really electrifying for the fans. You just can't imagine the day that these guys leave the game for good.
Definitely. Well, let's go ahead and, we'll shift back to the game that we're covering here, and that was the Los Angeles Kings. We are in the wake of the Los Angeles Kings and Montreal Canadiens. Canadiens win the game 2-1. When we look at the Kings, though, like we said, they got that statement win they needed against San Jose, even though there was some smoke and mirrors involved in that. There really was. But what does the team need when we're looking at contending? We're not looking at just making the playoffs. We don't want to become the St. Louis of the 2000s or anything. Remember that St. Louis team in the 90s made the playoffs every year and never really went anywhere. Nor did anyone really truly expect them to. They just had kind of built a solid team.
Right.
The Kings have higher aspirations. What are they going to need to do, though, to get to that? It looks like the left wing thing. People talk about that. But we're looking at the team, the way that they're playing. What's going on?
Well, today I think a huge difference in the game was special teams. Coming into the game, both teams were sputtering on the power play and very successful on the penalty kill. The Kings had killed 24 straight penalties. Montreal had the best PK on the road of any team. Mm-hmm. But Montreal was bottom 5 in power play. We saw that the other day against Anaheim. They really pretty much lost the game because their power play was so ineffective. And the Kings, who broke strong on the power play, looked like maybe they were departing from last year's woes, have now gone into a slump. Today, Montreal scores once on the power play.
But get into the TV picture here.
Yeah, Montreal scores once on the power play. The Kings don't score at all, and it's a one-goal game. So they've got to get that power play going, and that's part of a larger problem where they need finishers. Justin Williams, 3 goals on the season. Mm-hmm. Dustin Brown, wonderful player, but not known as that reliable of a finisher.
Right, yeah. So, something's going to happen. So we like the moves that they made with Richards and Gagne. That's working out well, even though, Richards on IR, but that's only temporary. But still, do they need to pick up another scoring winger? Let's go ahead and ask the million-dollar question. Can they reach the goals that they have, the aspirations, with the squad that they have now? Or do they really need to go out and get that another left winger who's capable of putting up those 30-plus goals every season?
That certainly seems to be the gaping hole in the lineup, where they've had at least 11, 12 different left wings last year on that top line. This season, a similar juggle. Now with Penner back, he goes in on the third line. I think if the right deal is available. Last year, they went after the best player available, and it didn't really serve them. Over and over again, Ponikarovsky, Sturm, Penner. These guys didn't pan out for him. But if the right deal becomes available, and I'm sure everybody's looking east at New Jersey and Zach Parise, who is an unrestricted free agent.
We have more stats coming down here. I've just been handed a note.
Oh, okay. Well, here we go. What?
By the fantastic King staff. That's Jennifer, by the way. She's
if the note's about a trade rumor, we're into it right now. But so far, nothing really doing on that front. But with the organizational depth they have and that hole they have at the left wing, I would not be surprised to see them make a move, but only if the right deal came down the pipeline.
Okay, and when we let's look at the part that they say wins championships, defense. What's going on that blue line? They've got a lot of skill back there. Right. Jack Johnson, high skill player. Drew Doughty, even though he had a little bit of shake-up tonight, which kind of the crowd held his collective breath, but he was okay, and we may now exhale. And Slava Voinov, also, he came up and was, the thing, but I didn't see a whole lot from him out there today.
No, Voinov, he had the one decent stretch pass. He had a pretty good game in the last game, but he's there to fill in. Let's face it, when we're talking about the Kings defense corps, we're talking about four main guys. Scuderi, who's been steady, Mitchell, who's also been steady but missed today's game with a lower body injury, and then we're talking about Johnson and Doughty. It's going to take consistent offensive production from those guys, and not flawless, but as close as you can get in terms of their decision-making. And we haven't really seen either of those things from those guys yet this year. We haven't seen the explosive Doughty that was a Norris finalist, that stole a game in last year's first-round series against San Jose. We haven't really seen him at full go, it seems. Jack is still finding his way, it seems, in terms of his identity, even with the certainty of his contract and being here for a long time. So those guys are just going to have to pick it up on the back end.
And what I'd like to see from Johnson too is that Doughty talks about it, he's just not having that great a year this year. So we'd like to see this a chance where Jack Johnson could establish himself, not as they're not fighting over number one. It's just someone has to anchor it. And if Doughty is not doing it right now, it'd be a good time for Jack to step up and just be the man, at least for the time being.
Definitely, and we've seen that in the past. Last year when Doughty was out dealing with a concussion, Johnson was playing some of his best hockey of the year. He seemed to relish that number one role. But so far this season, with both of them in the lineup, that's really been a case of mixed results. The thing with Johnson, I've always said that I'd like to see him make the simple plays, kind of pare down his game a little bit, because he has that explosive potential, but he doesn't have to show it off at every turn.
Exactly. And what about, again, you talk about Voinov being kind of a complimentary player, but people talked about him as though, he was someone who could kind of step in. Is he ready to really play on a day-to-day basis at this point, at this juncture of his career?
Maybe in a third pairing, second power play unit kind of role. He's a pretty strong puck mover. He doesn't look lost out there, but I don't know if he could put up with the physical rigors of playing 20 minutes and up a night at this point in his career.
Exactly. So let's go ahead and move on. We will kind of go around the NHL here, but first, I've got to talk about a little kind of sponsorship deal we have with the Puck Shops here. Anyone who plays hockey out there and you watch Inside Sports, just go ahead to the Puck Shops here. They've got the best selection of the most trusted brands in hockey. So if you need some jerseys, you need equipment, skates, all that, mention Inside Sports. Enter that promo code and you will get a 10% discount courtesy of Inside Sports. That's at thepuckshopshere.com. Beautiful, man. Beautiful. Hey, now let's talk. You mentioned you talked with PK Subban, and you write for Hockey's Future. Can we get a little teaser, a little taste of what might be coming up? One of those Andrew Knoll gems might be in the works. Can you give us a little something on that, or is that top secret?
Well, it's top secret, but since you're all insiders here on Inside Sports, that's why you get the big deals. That's why you get the inside information. Yeah, we do have a feature coming up on PK Subban, of course, the established pro, the budding star for the Montreal Canadiens, but also his two younger brothers, Malcolm Subban, who was a two-time CHL goaltender of the week already this season, and Jordan Subban, who is playing above his age and really the most coveted prospect of the three Subban brothers. So we're going to have something coming up on their home life and their hockey development, on hockey's future, right around Christmas time, and then we're going to have plenty of great coverage of the Winter Classic as well.
Most definitely. Winter Classic. Talking Winter Classic, what's going on in the East? I know you're an East Coast dude. Let's talk a little bit of Eastern Conference NHL now.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, the hot division right now is the Atlantic Division. You've got the Flyers, who are on a West Coast swing right now, keeping pace, and they really had a lot of turnover in their team. 9 or 10 new faces in the lineup, and more than that with the injuries that they've had lately. Right. And they keep chugging along, but they can't really gain ground in the division because Sidney Crosby's back in Pittsburgh, and they didn't seem to miss much of a beat without him. And the New York Rangers are absolutely on fire. I mean, who would have thought that without Stahl, with kind of a makeshift defense there, they would be one of the most suffocating defensive teams in the NHL? Of course, that's thanks largely to one of your favorites, Henrik Lundqvist. And they've got a ton of character up front, too. So the Rangers they are staying hot. They've buoyed all the way up to the top of the division, and there seems to be no end in sight for the streak they're on.
Well, I'm critical of the Rangers a lot, and I talk about them just not playing with the fire and the passion that they need to every night. It has nothing to do with the personnel that they have on that team. It's what they bring to the table every night collectively as a team. And yeah, if they can play hard, if you can get all those guys, that roster they have right now, to just bring 100% every single night, they're going to be one of the elite teams in the East. There's no question about it. But my whole problem with the Rangers for the last probably 10 years has been they just don't show up every game. And now since they got Lundqvist, it makes them appear a lot better than they are. Because without Lundqvist, who is, and I think unquestionably, Lundqvist is, all due respect to Pekka Rinne, all due respect to Ryan Miller, all due respect even to, Jonathan Quick here, who leads the league in shutouts right now. But Lundqvist, I think, is the best goaltender in the NHL at this time. Can you, what do you think?
Well, he's certainly been phenomenal this season and among the best pretty much every single year since he's established himself as a starter. And you mentioned Ryan Miller. He's back in net for Buffalo tonight.
Right.
That's huge to have him back. Enroth, I thought, filled in pretty steadily, but you start to solve a young guy when you get a lot of tape on him, and I think that was beginning to happen with Enroth. Now Miller returns tonight, apparently symptom-free from the concussion he sustained with that dust-up with Lucic, and I know if you're a fan of USA hockey, that's got to be great news no matter what you think of the Sabres.
Yeah. Most definitely. And then what about, other teams? There's a little bit of turnover there. And we talk about, Boudreau getting fired, but other teams, how about it's not the Carolina Panthers, but Florida Panthers, though. Florida Panthers. Just Carolina Panthers are NFL. I love football, too. Florida Panthers, though, they've got things turned around and really playing good hockey this season. Brian Campbell on the blue line doing his thing, and really they're just, the toast of the coast over there on the East Coast.
Oh, absolutely, particularly in that Southeast Division, which is just looking for a good story this year with Tampa underachieving, Washington underachieving, the Carolina Hurricanes, they sink in the standings and make a coaching change. But Florida has really been the steadiest ship down in the Southeast, and what we see is a lot of guys coming in on Talon's watch that were in Chicago. Chris Versteeg turns into a point-a-game player. Brian Campbell was basically a salary dump on Chicago's end. He's been a legitimate number one defenseman for Florida. So we've seen them bring in some guys that have impacted their team, and they play kind of an interesting style. It's contained and controlled, but it's fast, like we saw here the other night when they faced the Kings.
Definitely. And, you talk about Dale Talon, and really, there's no other way to say it, but in Chicago, he got jacked. That's what happened. He built that whole team, and then there was, you could call it a hostile Bowman takeover. If you look at the way that things played out there, I think he really got done wrong in Chicago. Winds up in Florida, and now we're seeing what happens when you get someone who's a mind like that going to another team that was down in the dumps. And Chicago was kind of down in the dumps before he got there, and then he helped build that team. Now you see him in Florida, so just shows you what leadership at the top can do for any team.
Oh, most definitely. And I think what we're saying with the Panthers is that they have a bright future as well with guys coming through, guys like Nick Bugstad, Jonathan Huberdeau, that NHL fans haven't gotten a chance to see yet. But as you see them kind of rounding out their roster at the top level, you know they've got these very talented players waiting in the wings. So be interesting to see if Talon can kind of exact some revenge by going down to what was kind of a hapless franchise and making them a contender.
Right, definitely. All right. Well, so what else have we got? We got about 4 or 5 minutes left. It's Andrew time.
Well, I just go around the league real quick, and we're about the 1/3 point of the season, more or less. And we just wanted to do some quick award picks here. Start out with the Calder Trophy. This is probably the easiest one. Kind of a slam dunk. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, 5th in the league in scoring, over a point per game. To think that people were questioning, does he have the size to be an NHL star? Can he come into the league right away as the number 1 overall pick? Should he stay in junior? Right. I think he's answered all those questions.
Well, I think that's the whole thing is with size. They talk about that. Like Barry Melrose always says, if you're a little guy, you have to prove you can play. If you're a big guy, you have to prove that you can't. And I'll tell you, just like I always say, I never stood eyeball to eyeball with so many guys 6 feet tall as when I started covering the NHL. You know, I go generously listed at 5'10". I'm actually 5'9.5", but I look eyeball to eyeball with guys who are 6 feet tall ever since I started covering the NHL.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I remember when we were going to CF finals in high school, we got to fill out our own measurements, and sometimes I think these guys in the NHL do the same thing, but
well, the whole thing is I talked to someone who went through the whole, the minor league system, and a lot of times guys are just, you have a lot of guys with a lot of great stats, and a lot of them are just numbers on paper because they haven't truly been scouted yet, and when they see someone who's 5'11" or above, they're more willing to think he can do this at the next level than someone who is like 5'10" and below. So what you have to do is do or say whatever you have to do or say just to get a peek at that next level as you're coming up. They don't care if you get there, if you're listed at 5'11", you get there, you're only 5'9", but you can play your butt off every night. Right. It doesn't matter. So you just got to do and say whatever you need to say or do to get that look from the coaches so you can move up in the system.
Oh, most definitely. And I think that Nugent-Hopkins is not necessarily a guy that had to go through that, but we see tons of guys his size that I'm sure do. They've got to, get whatever measurements they can on paper to get that look and get to the next level. But
Michael Camilleri is supposedly 5'10".
Allegedly, purportedly.
I mean, looking straight
We're investigating
ahead,
that.
Looking straight ahead, I see the top of his head. I'm just saying. But he's a heck of a player,
Oh, most definitely. You see more and more guys that size succeeding in the NHL. I mean, Martin St. Louis, a Hart Trophy winner, a guy who scored almost 100 points last season, and he was somebody that couldn't even get a look because of his size. I mean,
right.
More and more the new NHL is a game for speed, is a game for skill, is a game for hands, and I think it's a better product for that and also a more open opportunity for players to make the professional level.
All right, perfect. So you know what? We're going to go ahead and start to wrap things up here. Let's go ahead and one more time mention a little sponsorship agreement we have with the Puck Shops here. And anyone who plays hockey, you need any hockey gear, equipment, shin guards, gloves, anything, the best brands, the best makers, at the best prices at thepuckshopshere.com. And also, because you watch Inside Sports, enter the promo code Inside Sports. You'll get you 10% off just in time for Christmas.
There you go. Load up on those pads and blockers. That's what everybody wants in their stocking. Some new skates.
All right. Well, Mr. Knoll, it has been truly been a pleasure, as it is every single week when we do this.
Likewise, of course, the pleasure's mine.
Yeah. All right, so next Saturday game, when is the next Saturday game for the Kings? Do you know offhand?
I don't know if they're inviting us back the way they fared when we did the show. They're 0-4 now and outscored, 11-3?
11-3
yeah.
On shows when we do the from the arena post-game show.
Right.
So, this may or may not be our last show. We know how superstitious hockey players are, so if this is our last one for a while, then, hey, it's been real, everybody. But other than that, we should be back, though. I'm Charles E. Smith, Jr. This is Andrew Knoll. This is an Inside Sports production. The show is from the arena, always broadcast live right here on Ustream.tv. And thank you for joining us.